Hi, everyone, and welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe because this is my vidcast where I talk about all things pop culture. And today I have a very special guest. You might know him online as the Pew Pew Jew. He is the author of the of bullet points of safety on 27 words, 105 gun jokes, and of course his latest one, Spot Gilly Volume 1. It's available on Amazon right now. Definitely head over, but it is my good friend. We've known each other for years now, and we've been talking about doing an interview, and we're finally doing it. Please welcome to Studio Jake, my good friend Yehuda Remer.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome to Studio Jake.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I remember the first time you and I encountered each other was you had written an illustrated book
To-
about these very elitist sort of college liberals, and it's kind of a take on 10 Little Indians, but it's kind of a parody of that. And I remember that was the first time you and I connected. I think
I
was at the time I was doing book reviews for the Daily Wire, and that's how we connected, right?
right, you were doing book reviews, but I feel I was able to connect with. I think we connected beforehand,
Probably.
but I wouldn't have just you wouldn't have just done a cold review by someone you have no
Oh,
idea.
right, for sure.
So we had some dealings before. It's been so long that
I
I
know.
don't
I
even
feel like ever since the lockdowns, everything's a blur. My timeline's all out of whack.
know 100%. So I don't even remember how we officially met. I mean, I used to write for Ben's old website.
Mhm.
um, before Daily Wire, and from there, I don't even remember. But either way, we've been friends now for what, like close to 5, 6 years.
Yeah, and it always seems like when we want to get together to do a broadcast like this, and something would happen with me, like 85% of the time, and there was 50% something would happen to you, we'd have to cancel and everything. So
Yeah,
I'm glad this is the stars finally aligned where we could do this because one of the things we wanted to talk about is very serious. You and I were kind of DMing on X, formerly Twitter, about this, and because you had asked me for a movie recommendation to watch with your family. And I was kind of at a loss for a second because I was thinking, man, not a lot of good family stuff has really come out over the last few years. But I mentioned Orion in the Dark, which is a DreamWorks film, and I really like that movie because it has a really good father daughter dynamic, which you don't see in films. I mean, think about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, just how poorly Scott Lang, played by Paul Rudd, just how poorly his daughter Cassie treats him in that movie. It's very toxic, and if I had talked that way as a teenager to my father, I would have been punished probably severely. If you anyone who has seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania knows. But I'm curious, because I'll go online onto any of the apps. I'm not a parent yet, but I have a niece and a nephew, and I just think, man, if I want to hang out with them and we want to watch a movie together, it's very slim pickings. Now they could probably end up watching one of their favorites that's an older film, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of new stuff. And you being a father, I'm curious, what is that like? Searching for sort of a family film where you can all get together for a movie night.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely sad that in 2024, I have a 2 year old up to 14 year old, and we have a projector that we like to project movies on. But
Nice.
these movies come out, and my kids are like, "Oh my god, they look so good." And then you see across social media that there's all this transgender stuff stuffed in them. There's the Lightyear movie, which had the lesbian kiss, I think it was. And there was another movie my daughter was dying to see, but I wouldn't let her see it, called, I don't know, it came out last year, and I think there was like a transgender boy, teenage boy, or boy, I don't know. Just it's just one of the things that it's very difficult nowadays to watch a movie with your kids without doing insane amounts of research and homework on whether it's going to be appropriate or not. I
And
mean,
it's oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
oh yeah, I was
interrupt.
gonna say, I said I remember. I mean, I'm turning 40 soon. I remember back when I was a kid. It's like the only thing you really had to worry about was that my parents were like, "Well, is there cursing in the movie?"
Hmm.
Like that's about it now. you need to really do your research.
It's so true. And growing up as a pastor's kid, I remember I wasn't allowed to watch The Iron Giant until I was older because, like you said, it has 2 cuss words in it. It's got, that's it. That's the only thing. I guess it's a little violence, but outside of that, it's not. There's nothing else objectionable in the film. But even my parents, being pastors, they were ministers out of a Protestant church. They were like, no, we're not going to expose our son to this till we know he's not going to pick up on it and
And start
subconsciously
repeating
say
it,
the
right.
cuss words. Right, exactly. And that makes perfect sense. At the time I didn't like it. I was like, because all my friends were like, "Oh, did you see Iron Giant?" And I was like, no, no. And I had to burn my Pokemon cards. So it's not really. I didn't actually own any, but that's kind of a joke in PK circles.
Right.
Where, but it is true. And I was telling you this before we started recording about how I had to rack my brain when you and I were talking about it on XDMs because Orion in the Dark was one. Sonic Prime, which just ended actually. It only lasted 3 seasons. For those of you who are aware, I'm a huge Sonic, or not aware, I'm a huge Sonic the Hedgehog fan. So I'm always checking out the Sonic media that's coming out. And then a few years ago, we had The Bad Guys with which was also from DreamWorks. And one
Right.
of the things I like about that is, yeah, the bad guys do kind of look cool at the beginning of the film, but then you see how their lifestyle as the bad guys is not wholesome, and then they end up having a redeeming story arc without giving too much away. But it's I was thinking, what was the last? Those are the big 3 that I can think, other than what the Angel Studios is doing with like the Wing Feather. And
There is one that just
oh, go
came.
ahead.
There is one that came out. I forgot what it was called. My kids just watched it, and it was actually pretty cute. The Adam Sandler one with the lizard.
Oh, Leo. Yeah, that's actually
Leo.
a pretty good film. Yeah.
That was good, and again, it was clean. I feel like any kind of animation movie that Adam Sandler does tends to be clean.
He's a dad, so
Right. Well, there's a lot of them still dads, right? But
sure, sure.
but I think the things that Adam Sandler does tend to be a little more on the clean side. Maybe a curse word here or there, but nothing stuffed in. I mean, I know I saw that the new Spider-Man cartoon, or not the new one, but the second
Oh,
Miles Morales one.
across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, and I think I saw that, like, his dad was wearing was it like a trans pin or something
Mhm.
in the movie? It's like,
Yeah, protect trans kids or something like
right,
that,
something
yeah.
like that. So obviously it's so quick. You unless you're really searching for it, I might let my kid watch that one. Um maybe not, because like I just don't want to support it. But
Mhm.
it's just one of those things that, it's very difficult. I'm lucky though, because my 14-year-old, who will be 15 in August, he's already at the point now where he living with me. I mean, you know me and follow me on social media, so you know the type of person I am. So me being their father, my kids are very screwed up but well adjusted at the same time for the real world. And my 14-year-old, he's able to watch movies that are extreme, if you will. Obviously, if there's any sex or nudity, I will try to. I tell him, hey, I'm pausing it. Close your eyes. I zip right through it. But we'll watch violent rated R movies. I think we're gonna watch Tombstone soon, and
Oh,
and
nice.
like
Good
right, like
choice.
he's at the age now where I get to share with him all these fantastic movies that most kids don't get to watch till they're older. But for my other ones, it's very rough. Every now and then you'll find. I think you were speaking about Sonic. I think the Sonic movies were actually pretty good.
Mhm.
I enjoyed those. My kids love them. My 7-year-old can't wait for the new Knuckles six
Oh, yeah.
part.
That looks really good. Yeah,
It
that's
looks
on
fantastic.
Paramount, I think, yeah.
I think, yeah, Paramount Plus coming out, I think, in April. So there's stuff out there, but again, the problem is growing up, you didn't have to go and do the research. It's like, oh, it's a kids movie. Okay, it's geared for kids without any kind of liberal nonsense. Now something comes out, I'm like, oh, that looks cute, and then you're like, yep, but you're not watching it.
Yeah. It's so true because what's even more sinister is how they're infecting already established franchises. So, like you were using Lightyear as an example, where they were. That's something that you probably saw when you were younger, right? I went and saw the very first Toy Story when I was a child, and it blew me away. And so I watched all of them. I didn't watch four. The trailer for four looked very sad. So I just, it's not sad in that it would have made me sad. It just looked like a sad movie. So I watched Lightyear, and if I was going into this unawares, because I'm a pop culture guy, people who had seen the movie before it came out, who had done reviews that already talked about what was coming, and I would not have known. And I watched that, just how sinister it is, because I also was talking with our friend Alicia Krause, and she was talking about the Babysitters Club. So it was a very popular book when I was a kid, when she was a kid, and then Netflix comes along and they do it, and they introduce a trans kid into the story. In the Babysitters Club, which is about a group of friends who babysit kids. It's just supposed to be about their life and how they go through, but no, they're going to inject it. And I think that is very sinister, because they know if they do it on their own. So I'll say something like "Call Me by Your Name," right? Which is let's be real, it's about a predator. It's about a groomer, and they're trying to romanticize this grooming relationship. Well, that failed at the box office, right? So that you've got to put it in things like Lightyear or something else in order to save face. And I'm curious, just have you noticed that as well? Just how they want to push that sort of agenda onto kids by using popular franchises, like you mentioned, Miles Morales, the Across the Spider-Verse. Have you noticed it as well in other aspects when you're trying to look for stuff for your kids?
I mean, I definitely notice it, that they're slipping it in to a lot of movies. But what's interesting is, though, I'm coming at right, like I'm not. I watch a ton of movies, but not really like kid stuff anymore, because sometimes my kids, they're in school, and during the summer we watch a little more. But I see it when you have like live action movies, um, not necessarily cartoons, if you will, right? Like I know, like my one. Okay, I this is my top 5 of all time, because I think, and I can back up what I'm about to say. Um, The Sandlot is one of my favorite, in my top 5 of all time. The reason is, it is, in my opinion, one of the most American movies ever. Right? I mean, literally, it's from a good old time when kids just go out. They're not sitting around on their butts all day. They're having fun, playing sports, getting sunlight. And on top of that, there's a problem. They have to use their ingenuity to fix the problem, and there's consequences to their actions, right? It's like what America should be all about. And if The Sandlot would be made today, there would 100% be a transgender character as one of the players.
Right. Exactly.
Forget The Sandlot number 3 or 2, where they actually had girls on the team, right? Which I thought was blasphemous, because nothing
Oh, we
against.
can't have all boys. We can't
Yeah,
have all boys. Heaven
right, right.
forbid.
Like I mean, not. I mean, look, there's some women out there who will kill me in any sport. There's no question about it. But like the whole idea of the first movie, right? Like, you play ball like a girl, right? It's one of the most classic movie lines. Like, there's some things that are like sacred, right? And that, I think, is sacred. But I am so weary with anything that, especially Disney, will come out with, that's live action, especially because, again, no matter what it is, and in terms of series, I don't know enough series out there. Like, I don't follow it enough, but I do think that they do slowly slide in, sometimes not even subtly. Sometimes it's just in your face. They will slide things in that I think are highly inappropriate and should not be, that kids should not watch.
Oh yeah, I see it with Transformers. Like, a lot of people don't realize the '80s Transformers cartoon was very, what you would call today, what they would use the word diverse, right? So there was a character who was disabled named Chip. There was There was a Hispanic character named Raul who would work with the Transformers. There was a Japanese professor who would work with the Transformers, and in the final season, they had a character who was kind of based on the mullahs but in the final season, that the Autobots and the he would always ally with the Decepticons, but then wiggle his way out of getting any sort of consequences on the international scale, meant to be funny. And so then, though, here comes Transformers Earthspark, all these years later, these 40 years later, and they're going to have a Transformer that has pronouns. For one thing, why are robots even worried about this? It just boggles my mind. Now, I'm kind of a hypocrite because I know, I grew up with the 80s where the Autobots were clearly male and they had female Autobots, right? Elita 1, RC, and all these characters. But it is kind of weird to me that then it just kind of existed as it was. Like, this is just a thing we're doing to make them seem more sentient. So they're male and female, but again, they were binary. There was none of this they them. This
Right.
Autobot is that they them. It's so ridiculous, and that even worked in its way. But like you were saying, we're talking about ones like you mentioned, The Sandlot. I mentioned Transformers. What are some films from your past that you like to watch that you bring in with to share with your kids? I remember growing up, a big one for my family was we watched Milo and Otis all the time. We watched the original Land Before Time. All the sequels are not good, but the original Land Before Time. The Lion King was a big one in my house. My sister's favorite for a while was Beauty and the Beast. So we watched that one a lot. And then we also had the ones that were a little bit calmer, more toned down. VeggieTales being the original VeggieTales, not the Netflix fiasco one. Those were all really big stories that were and films and TV shows that were in our house. I'm curious, what are some that were real big in your household that you like to enjoy with your kids?
So I think it's interesting. I grew up with tons of movies. My parents took away the TV though when I was 5, so I didn't grow up watching TV. I watched a ton of movies. Like, we had the TV and a VCR, but no actual TV. But I remember my big thing is I loved all those good, clean Disney movies and not even the animation ones. I think a big one, a Peter Pan was always a big one for me. I always wanted to be Peter Pan. I love that.
Fantastic film.
Yeah, such a good movie, and I always fancied Tiger Lily so much, so much cuter than Wendy. But as a little kid, right, Tiger Lily, that's who I wanted to save all the time. But I clearly remember some of the big movies that I watched constantly. Ask my dad to go to the video store to rent the VHS 80 times a month was like I said, The Sandlot, all those great the Big Green, Angels in the Outfield.
Oh, fantastic movie.
All those heavyweights, like all those good Disney movies when they used to make good movies. In my opinion, I think and I don't think The Sandlot's a Disney movie. However, I think one of Disney's greatest movies they ever made was The Rocketeer.
Oh, that's a fantastic
And
film.
I love The Rocketeer. I mean, I still watch it, if I'm writing a book or if I'm doing some graphic design for, new shirts on my website, I'll put The Rocketeer on by myself and I'll watch it. Uh, you know, Jennifer Connelly, better looking now than she was 30 years ago. But the Rocketeer just encompassed again everything that's good about America. There was good versus evil, and that was it. There was no. I actually hate, and this is something that I really can't stand, how every single piece of film or TV that comes out, to the most part, I would say 98%, everything has a tortured hero, right?
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
hate that. I hate that. I miss the days of good versus evil, nothing more. There was never any growing up. All the good guys never had this desire or pull to become, you know, one of the bad guys. They always wanted to be. It was good versus evil, and it was that simple. Now you just don't have that anymore.
Yeah, it's so true because I think really think that's why there's such a pull to anime, which we don't. One of the things that's interesting is if you watch something like My Hero Academia, which is for teenagers, I don't recommend it for young children, but because of the violence in it. But Deku, if you look at Deku's character, he has no desire to become a villain. He wants to become, in this case, because the story takes place in Japan, he wants to become Japan's greatest hero. And one of the things I like about that show is it's every little boy's fantasy. He's a regular kid in a world where superpowers are the norm, and he gets the opportunity to meet his favorite hero, which is All Might. And then All Might chooses him as his successor, and he has lots of opportunities to be tempted to turn away from the path, but he doesn't. And even his rival Bakugo, who wants to be the greatest hero, he's kind of a hothead. The villains kidnap him because they think, oh, he is perfectly susceptible because of how hot-headed he is. We can turn him. But then when he's captured by the villains, they keep trying to turn him, basically trying to brainwash him. But even him being as hot-headed and arrogant as he is sometimes, is he keeps saying no. And in fact, if you let me go, I'm going to blow you all away. That's his powers, is he can blow things up. He's like, I'm going to blow you all away. Just let me out of this.
Right.
They have him strapped down so he can't use his powers. And I think that is part of the pool of anime, why people are turning to anime and even the Korean stuff. But more to your point, yeah, I don't need my heroes to be tortured, or like if they have some little bit of tragedy in their past, like say Batman does. I understand that. I get that, but it's always this. For some reason, they have to insert these forceful. Oh well, he's just good because he might have a conscience, but he really wishes he could go to the other side, but doesn't. And I noticed they only do that with male characters specifically. The female characters are always good. They're always pure. Their only flaws is that they might be too good at something, or speaking specifically about newer things, not older things. And I from that perspective, um, do you think that because it seems to me that now the public is always a little bit behind. This is what I always tell my fellow people in the pop culture audience, or the space, I should say. Don't disregard the audience. They're
Okay.
behind us because they're not plugged in like we are. Like,
Right.
you and I, we talk about politics all the time, not just in the entertainment sphere, but outside.
Right.
The general audience is always a little bit behind because that's not the space they live in. And now that it's been a couple of years, I've noticed that even the general audiences are noticing that, and a lot of these films are bombing at the box office. What's succeeding? Top Gun Maverick, Godzilla minus one, Barbie, which I haven't seen, so I won't say whether or not I think that should have won at the box office. But my point is, it seems that those movies where they're trying to force this onto the audience are starting to fail. And I'm curious, do you think I'm right about that? Do you think that the audience are starting to be in tune with it, and they're starting to say, hey, we don't want that stuff anymore?
Yes and no. I think there definitely is a push to convince the audience of one way. I think uh, that is something that I think people are waking up to. However, at the same time, most movies that come out nowadays are just pure crap.
True.
I think they're not even good movies. I saw Godzilla minus one, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Uh, really well done. Even though I think Godzilla's eyes were too human looking, and at one point it's just like, no, like he doesn't look menacing. But like Godzilla minus one, like you said, Top Gun Maverick, I thought was an absolutely phenomenal film. I thought Ghostbusters,
Afterlife.
Afterlife,
Mhm.
right? I thought that was a near perfect movie. I was trying so hard to find something wrong with that movie, and I couldn't find anything wrong. It hit on, it gave the audience what they want: a good, entertaining movie without any politics at all. And on top of that, it was incredibly nostalgic, right? It tied up
Mhm.
any loose ends you might have had from Ghostbusters 1, maybe even 2 a little bit. We won't talk about the other one, He Who Must Not Be Named. We won't talk about that one. But it like when you just make an entertaining movie, then it will be successful. The problem is when you start inserting agendas that go against the what a majority of Americans believe, then yeah, why am I spending money to be preached to about something that I don't care about?
That's a great point. It's like subtlety is a lost art in Hollywood, whether it or even in New York where they film all the television shows. It's like, can we get a like? This is what I always say. There's a difference between woke and the DI stuff and politically correct. So you watch Star Trek, even the original series, it was very politically correct. They had some very politically correct opinions, but it was told in this sort of subtle way where you didn't feel that they were being preachy. You just knew
Right.
it was there. You might roll your eyes every once in a while, but you put it on the back burner. But then you look at something like, say, the Walker Texas Ranger reboot, which is just called Walker, and it's just
Right.
in your face, constantly thrown at you. You know, how dare Walker think, be a tough guy, totally destroying the conception of the original series, right? And I think that they just lost the ability to be good storytellers. I always joke on when I do my regular videos, I always say they put their therapy notes in their scripts.
I hear that. Yeah, it's funny. I'm thinking going forward, if there's any movies that are coming out that like I truly am excited for. Like I am excited for the new Ghostbusters. Um, but besides that, there's oh, I'm excited actually for the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Oh, that does look good. I saw the
That looks
trailer for it.
fantastic, and I love Henry Cavill. I watched Argyle yesterday, and it was a pure crap movie. It is so embarrassing that they should just pull it. I mean, it was just so bad on so many levels. And then I realized at the end, and I'm not going to give it away, it ties into Matthew Vaughn's other stuff that he's been doing.
Oh, interesting.
And then I understood the whole like why Matthew Vaughn did it the way he did. But it was just such a fantastic cast and such a bad movie. Um,
Wow, that's
but
interesting.
again,
I haven't seen it yet, but
right. But
I want to
here's
see
the
it soon.
thing. Here's the thing. There was nothing pushed in your face. It was just a crappy movie.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. Okay, I'll give you a good example because I know you're a big anime guy. I'm not. So honestly, I don't think I've ever watched an anime episode of anything ever. But I did watch The Last Airbender, the new one.
Not an anime, but okay,
Right,
continue.
it's not no, but it's not an anime cartoon.
It is anime inspired, but it is not an anime. It's not done in the traditional art style
Oh,
that anime is done in.
shows how much I know. I thought it was. Anyways, like the new Last Airbender, I found it decently entertaining, or at least the battle scenes, but everything else, like the writing and the acting, was absolutely atrocious.
Mhm.
But I still watched it because they weren't shoving any BS down my throat, and I was like, I've been doing a lot of new designs coming up on my website, so like like I have my laptop that I'm using here, but then I have a dual monitor right behind me, and
Mhm.
so I've been watching a lot of stuff as I've been editing, and like I watched Last Airbender, and I'm like, all right, it's crappy, but it's still better than half this other stuff that has come out. And again, they're not pushing anything on you, and the minute I feel that I'm being preached to, that's why I actually okay. That's why I actually find a ton of adult animation hilarious
Yeah, same. Yeah.
because they will take the idea of transgenderism or politics and they will lambast everybody. There's no one
Mhm.
that's safe. And I think obviously Rick and Morty does an amazing job at that, although the last season sucked. But like Rick and Morty did a unbelievable job. I still think that Family Guy nails it every time. So does South Park when they decide to make new episodes. But
Bob's Burgers.
so Bob's Burgers I never got into. I like King of the Hill.
Oh, love King of the Hill.
King of the Hill is great. But I'm saying like that's why like I'll go to Netflix or Hulu and like go to adult animation and like I'm watching all these cartoons and yeah, there'll be a like a transgender character, but they're making fun of that character throughout the show as much as the characters defending themselves, like, and that I don't care about because they're not just shoving one side. It's a free for all,
Right.
and I really enjoy when things are politically incorrect. I mean, I people get upset, like let's say call it what's his name? Oh my gosh, who's the comedian that's always in hot water? Dave Chappelle.
Oh yeah, Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle made some Jewish jokes. They were freaking hilarious. They were funny. Like, I don't care who you are. I don't care what, oh, he's an anti-Semite. I'm like, yeah, he pretty much made fun of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, is he anti-Semitic? Who knows? It's definitely a possibility. But I'm not going to judge him on being anti-Semitic. So I love that political incorrectness that they put into things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I feel that there was kind of a backlash to sort of the decadence of the 90s, the early 2000s, but they just went so far the other side
Yep.
where it's been where people are starting to notice. And like you said, it gets real, dialogue gets real preachy. Like I remember, like I use Star Trek as an example. Even with the closeness of the senior officers, because usually in a Star Trek show, the senior officers are the main characters, right? You can't follow every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the show, which is a bad example because there's a character named Harry in Voyager. But anyway, but then I was watching the Star Trek Discovery, which finally got canceled. Thank goodness. Golly, what a terrible show. But there's like a scene where the captain, Saru, I think is his name is, he orders their chief engineer, or I don't know if she's the chief engineer or one of them. He orders her to do something and he says, I need this done in 2 hours. And her reply to him is, I'll get it done when I get it done, get off my bleep. And I'm like, wait, these are supposed to be military officers. And there's no way that would have flown on Captain Kirk's bridge, on Captain Picard's bridge, or even Cisco's bridge.
right.
I just was shocked. And a lot of people give Voyager a hard time because the people are saying, oh, they're off in deep space, but it doesn't feel like a survival type show. And they have a female captain, but they don't take away her femininity. She's
Right.
a woman captain, and she leads how a woman captain should lead. And if she needs to, she puts her security officer or her first officer, who are both men, in charge of the situation. But she doesn't. That's one of the reasons why I still like Star Trek Voyager. Is she is a strong female character, but without all of the baggage that these woke
With all that
people put on it.
feminism.
Exactly. And now one thing that does not bog itself down in political correctness is your books. So, and I know you've got, like I said, like I mentioned, we've his newest one, Spot Gilly, which is a really fun. I actually got to see it before it came out, and it's kind of like a better version of Where's Waldo, and it even has bonus people that you can find. So tell people a little bit, or tell my audience a little bit about Spot Gilly, what inspired it, and where they can find it.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you. So Spot Gilly stemmed because I was walking in my hallway and my monster animalistic children didn't clean up the hallway and they left a Where's Waldo just lying in the middle of the hallway. And I pick it up and I'm like, God, I love Where's Waldo. And from there, it was like, man, it would be fun to make my own Where's Waldo one day. Then it hit me. I'm like, oh, wait, I've published 8 books. I could make a Where's Waldo. So, I called up my illustrator. I'm like, dude, this is what I need on the cover. And 6-7 months later, I came out with a book called Spot Ghillie, where you get to find the sniper in his ghillie suit and 10 other characters. And it's been doing pretty well. People in the gun industry were loving it. I brought a bunch of copies to SHOT Show in January, and
Nice.
I Oprah'd the heck out of it. I'm like, you get a book, you get a, everyone gets a book, and I was just giving them out. And it's been fantastic. I got some really positive reviews, great feedback. People are like, this is a fun book that we can do with our children that we want to do too. They're like, oh, if our kid doesn't want to do it. And like, I literally had people from like firearms companies and silencer companies just sitting there at their booth trying to find, like, I see them going page by page, and it was great. So yeah, you can definitely find Spot Ghillie on Amazon if you think my autograph is worth $8. Or as I like to say, and I'm guessing you'll get the reference because no one ever gets this and it drives me crazy. If you think my Herbie Hancock is worth $8, you can go to my website, thepewpewjew.com, and get it.
And it is so important, folks. We want to, I always say, support indie writers or alternative writers wherever you can find them, because the mainstream is not, as me and Yehuda have been saying for the past half hour, the mainstream is just a poisoned well right now. Hopefully we can get an antitoxin in there very soon. But for now, go support. And I have read the ABCs of gun safety on. I've not done the coloring book, but I've read the book, and but I also, like I said, I reviewed 10 Little Liberals for Daily Wire, and of course there's bullet points right there on the screen,
which Ben Shapiro did call comprehensive.
There you go. Can't go wrong with that. But Yehuda, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, you can find me across social media at the Pew Pew Jew, and then thepewpewjew.com.
Awesome. And of course, everyone, you can find my stuff on my website, StudioJakeMedia.com. You can support what I'm doing on the channel on my locals page, StudioJakeMedia.locals.com. Yehuda, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for giving this wonderful talk. And I hope you'll come back on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die.